The College World Series finals are officially set. The Texas A&M Aggies going for their first national championship, first College World Series title in school history, helping us break it all down as he has done all postseason, our good friend Ryan Brauninger of Tex Ags. And may I say, it's gone pretty well for Texas A&M thus far, Ryan, when you've taken the time. So I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, and it was good to see you in person, Chris. Get to shake hands. It's always, these interviews have been a pleasure for me to do, but it's just cool to meet all these people that you interact with now via Zoom or social media. Get to meet them in person, shake their hand, and I'm hoping we link back up in Aggie Land this fall.
Yeah, man, it was a pleasure to meet you as well. We had some great times on the field, in the press box, what have you. Always a good time. But let's go ahead, Ryan, dive right into it again. Really exciting times. Texas A&M has punched their ticket at the College World Series finals. They will take on the Tennessee Volunteers Saturday, Sunday, and, of course, Monday if necessary. But first, Ryan, let's talk about how they got here, right? The trek in Omaha. What I think is really interesting, A&M has faced two SEC teams in 3 different games. They go undefeated, run through this thing. They beat Florida twice, of course, beat them in that game one on Saturday 3-2, beat Kentucky on Monday 5-1, and then, of course, Florida 6-0 on late Wednesday night to punch the ticket. Just talk about what you've seen from this Aggies team. There's so much to take away, I feel like, but what has been the overwhelming, I guess, characteristic or narrative or trend or what you've seen that has led to the success to get them to this point that is the College World Series final?
Yeah, I think you look at on the field, it's been the pitching, right? I mean, they've surrendered 3 runs in 3 games. The shutout of Florida last night was the 12th shutout of the season, which ties the school record. It was in game 12 of the College World Series, in A&M and the number 12. It all kind of fit, right? But on the field, the story's been the pitching for me. Outside of that, dude, like I've tried to, because I'm a baseball analyst, break down what I've seen from, pitch to pitch or situationally. But on the whole, this run that A&M's on is about like grit and toughness and togetherness. And especially whenever you're dealing with the injuries. And look, I mean, they're going to play for a national championship without Braden Montgomery, without Shane Sadeo, and Jace LaViolette and Hayden Schott basically on one legs. And beating a team like Tennessee was already going to be a Herculean task. Like, Tennessee is the most complete team, I think, here. I don't think the A&M coaches staff wouldn't even really fight you, especially, with A&M's injuries. But I'd really like to see this matchup with both teams fully loaded, right? Because there's big leaguers on both rosters. And I think that if I'm being really honest with myself, that's what when I look at this series, like, I'm just wishing that the Aggies were at full strength, but they're not. And I know Tennessee's probably dealing with some stuff too, but the storyline for A&M has just been that grit, man, that toughness and the will to win. And it's somebody different on each night. And, Gavin Grahovic got going last night, but Jace is playing on one leg. And then, Caden Sorrell, the true freshman, hitting toward the bottom of the order. He's just been a rocket ship all season. And, Ted Burton is a guy that doesn't get talked a lot about. Jackson Appel, Ali Camarillo has a triple last night and has just been sensational at shortstop. So, it's starting to give me like a vibe where it's like, okay, yeah, they really are behind the 8 ball because they're so banged up. But there's something about the way they're playing that it's hard for me to sit there and say A&M can't beat Tennessee. A&M can beat Tennessee. It got a lot harder when Jace LaViollette's hamstring acted up. But they can still do it. It's going to take another Herculean effort. But, I mean, why doubt this team with the way they're playing and the toughness that they're showing? I think they're up for the fight.
Brauning, are we to the point where we're giving Max Weiner a lifetime contract? Because I could argue he deserves it, what he's done with that pitching staff.
Yeah, I tweeted the other night after the game against Kentucky, if he doesn't win National Assistant Coach of the Year, they need to quit giving the thing out. I mean, the turnaround the Aggie pitching staff has had. And after last year in 2023, they set a school record for walks by 40. And now they just set the school record for strikeouts. So I think whenever you're talking about Max and his influence on these kids, you've got to look at the micro level and the macro. On the macro, he's given this dominate the zone mentality. And it's basically, we're going to throw the ball over the plate and deal with the results. And that has permeated the entire pitching staff. On the micro level, Chris, he's given each of these kids an individual plan to how to do the macro. So Chris Cortez's plan looks way different than Evan Aschenbeck's, looks way different than Josh Stewart's and Ryan Prager's and Justin Lampkin's and Brad Rudis. And all of these guys do something different with the baseball with the theme of we're going to throw it over the plate and we're going to live with the results. And that is so simple. It's such a simple thing to say, and it's a really hard thing to do. But you saw, like, Max Weiner's stock was going up before this postseason, and now with this College World Series and, like, his interactions with some of the media and, you know, the way he talked about that mound meeting with Ryan Prager against Kentucky, I think the national college baseball folks are figuring out that this guy might be 29, 30 years old, but he's just scratching the surface of what he's going to be as a coach. And I think we're going to look back here in College Station and go, you know, in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we're going to go, man, remember when Max Weiner got his start at Texas A&M? Because his trajectory of his coaching career has a big, giant, highlighted yellow arrow pointed straight up.
Brauninger, you mentioned Jace LaViolette. What's the latest status on him? I know he started in that game last night. I mean, would you say how close to 100% is he going into this finals?
I mean, what did your eyes tell you? I thought he was 60 to 70% maybe. Mm-hmm. The ball that Kobe Shelton hit over his head for a double, that's a play that Jace makes 100 times out of 100 if he's healthy. But you're not going to, like, if as long as that leg is still attached, Jace is going to try to play, right? And now they get a couple of days off. Maybe that gets him a little bit closer to 80%, but I just don't think with hamstrings, you know how those things are, man. Like, I don't think they can get him to 100% before the end of this thing. So he's just going to have to go through it. But I also think Jace's presence in the lineup and Jace's presence in the dugout and just being, you know, on the team out there playing does a lot to calm the rest of the guys. So, you know, they've dealt with adversity, they've dealt with gut punches, but you still want your All-American out there and hitting, you know, in the 3-hole.
Brawny, what are your first impressions of Tennessee? Obviously, we know they're electric, what they did in the College World Series. They're complete as any, but what are the first things, like when you look at the challenges that they will pose to Texas A&M in this best of 3, what stands out to you?
Yeah, just pick your poison, right? With Tennessee, I mean, it's all going to be tough to deal with. You start with the lineup at the top and Christian Moore, who, I mean, playing as good or better than Jack Caglione, and that's hard to do. Really hard to do. And it starts there, but it goes all the way down to Cal Stark in the 9-hole, and there's no easy outs. The exit velos that they produce up and down the order are incredible. Like, I think they had, 6 balls against Florida State that were 110 plus. It's just crazy, man. It's every time Christian Moore swings the bat, it's coming out at 105 or greater. So, but, you know, it's not just him. Blake Burke has been sensational, and Dylan Dreiling, and you know, you just go through it, and Billy Amick and all these guys, Hunter Inslee, just Kavaris Tears. I love that kid. I watched them play. A&M played Tennessee in Hoover, and, like, my favorite player on the Tennessee roster was Kavaris Tears, and as good as Christian Moore was, that should tell you something. So, yeah, A&M's pitching's got their hands full. They've obviously been great here in Omaha, but I don't know if it's possible to keep that Tennessee lineup down. You know, if you keep them under 5 or 6 runs, I think that's a huge win. So then it comes, you know, how do you scratch your runs? And A&M's been really opportunistic. We started to see them impact the ball at an extra base hit level, like we did for most of the season. We started to see that again last night. Maybe that's a good sign, but, you know, we talk about Tennessee's offense, and you flip the script, and their pitching is just, you know, it's been as good as A&M's. And the pitching numbers are very, very similar over the course of the season, and they do it a little bit differently with A.J. Causey and Drew Beam and Xander Seacrest. And then, you know, they got Kirby Connell on the back end, and Nate Snead, hard-throwing right-hander. So they got a good mix. And these, to me, Chris, especially when these two rosters are healthy, these are the 2 most talented teams in college baseball. Top to bottom, that's what I think. And I thought whenever the Omaha field was set, and I was going through and I said, okay, who are the 3 or 4 most talented teams there? I went Tennessee, A&M, Florida. And then I didn't know enough about some of these ACC schools to put whether it was going to be North Carolina or Florida State, Virginia as that 4th one. But I thought there was a clear, as far as, this is no dig at Kentucky. They had a sensational season. But I just think in terms of pro prospect raw talent, they were behind those other 3 from the SEC. And, you know, that's why I thought that, you know, Florida, A&M, and Tennessee were the last 3 standing, or 3 of the last 4 standing. So I think this is the matchup that college baseball fans, if you're just a neutral, that you were looking at in April and early May and going, oh, that would be a sick College World Series final. and it's going to be super cool. I just wish A&M was healthy.
Brawny, you mentioned the pitching side of things and the pitching matchups, and in a series like this, best 2 out of 3, that's so important. Prager's been fantastic. Lampkin has really stepped up. Of course, we know what the back end of the bullpen looks like with Cortez and Aschenbeck. What do the pitching matchups look like for A&M Brawny? Is it going to be Prager, Lampkin, and then if they get to a game 3, figure it out from there? What do you expect? How do you expect Texas A&M to match up with that Tennessee offense?
Well, if you throw Prager in game 1, you'd give him 5 days rest. If you throw him in game 2, you give him 6 days rest. Lampkin is going to be interesting, man, because that was the most he's been used in a while, and he was used like twice in 4 or 5 days. So, how does he respond in terms of his body? But when Shane Sadeo went out in that super regional game, somebody was going to have to go get you outs. Like, it shorted the starting rotation, it shorted the bullpen, and so maybe there's a guy down there that either hasn't pitched or we haven't talked about that's going to be called upon to get big outs. I still think that storyline's in this A&M team, and because of what we've seen Lampkin and Josh Stewart do, and then on the offensive side, Caden Kent, like he's come in and been so impactful for A&M. I think that there's somebody out there that's going to do it. I don't know who it's going to be, but could it be Brad Rudis as a starter? And he hasn't pitched at all in Omaha. He pitched here 2 years ago on that 2022 team. The coaching staff really trust him. Again, he throws the ball over the plate. It's a little bit different look. So could they go with him? They have a super talented left-hander in Caden Wilson who hasn't thrown here. I mean, it's 93 to 97 from the left side. And when you want to talk about matching talent with Tennessee's talent, well, Caden Wilson's super talented. Just that's a massive spot. But somebody's got to do it, man. It's just I don't know who it's going to be. So we'll see. But Prager will definitely throw one of the games. I would bet they may have to hold Lampkin till Monday if they get to a Monday game. And so that makes me think, that, do you start Prager on full rest in game 2? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do.
You look at from the other side of this, Brawny, Texas A&M's offense going up against that Tennessee pitching staff. Because admittedly, when I look at this series, I think I like A&M starting pitching a little bit more. Tennessee, it's interesting as good as they are. I don't think the frontline starting pitching is dominant. I mean, it's really good. And Drew Beam, if he pitches the way he does, right, that was high-quality Drew Beam we saw the other night. But they've got a really interesting philosophy, Brawny, where in that game 1, and I would imagine they'll do so on Saturday, they'll roll out Chris Stamos to be their opener. A.J. Causey will then follow. He was not very good against Florida State a couple days ago, 1 2/3, 5 hits, 5 earned runs. What do you think is the offensive approach for Texas A&M? I mean, does it really change much? Because like you mentioned, this is going to be a series where you're going to have to score runs to win in this thing.
Yeah, and that's the combination of Stamos and Causey is what A&M saw in Hoover. And Causey he was so good in that game. And it's almost like when he had a bad one against Florida State, all the other coaches are like, dang it, because he's not going to have bad ones, right? He's too good. And so I would think, obviously, Tennessee will do that in one of the games. Drew Beam will get the ball in another, and then Xander Seacrest would be the final guy in terms of starting role. But, I think for A&M, they had 6 runs on 6 hits last night, and I thought it didn't do the offense justice. I thought the quality of their at-bats were outstanding, and then I thought the quality of contact was just as good. Michael Robertson made some sensational plays in the Florida outfield, and so did Tyler Shellnut in left. If those guys don't range over to make and run a long way to run down balls in the gap and make catches, it's probably an 8-9 to nothing win for A&M. And people are starting to talk about the Aggies offense finally churning out extra base hits in bunches in Omaha. But, for A&M, it's a super seasoned lineup. You have the super talented freshmen in Grahovic and Sorrell, but everybody else has had hundreds and hundreds of college at-bats. And so, I think for them is just continuing to do what they do. Like A&M, they are super simplistic in their themes of their pitching and their offense. Pitching, we talked about, dominate the zone. Super easy to say, right? Hitting, since Michael Early got here to College Station with Jim Schlossnagle as a hitting coach, his hitting philosophy is take the balls, swing at the strikes. How simple is that? But it's worked. And we were talking on the broadcast last night, Chris, about how the walk, people just look at walks and they kind of blow it off. But A&M has been in the top 5 in the country or in the top, I can't remember every statistic, but they've been in the top elite group of teams that take walks every year. And I know they set a program record for walks this year. So at some point, it can't just be, oh, it's just ball 4. No, that's an offensive weapon for a team. When they're that good at taking walks and that consistent at taking walks, then you have to look at it as an offensive weapon. So if A&M can get in some 2-strike counts and battle, and if you are keen on letting the pitcher like get deep into counts, you're going to strike out some. So the strikeouts to me aren't that big of a deal, because in order for you to strike out, you got to get deep into a count, right? But if A&M can get into those deep counts and work a few walks, that's where I think they can have some offensive success and try to match I don't think you can match Tennessee blow for blow, but you can match them paper cut for paper cut. And I think that would be, I don't think A&M wants to play a bazooka game. I think A&M wants to play a knife game. And if they can do that, look, if they were healthy, I think they can play a bazooka game with Tennessee, but they're not. So they're going to have to play a little bit different maybe to keep this thing close, and then you try to hand it to Cortez and Aschenbeck to close these games out.
Bronny, I've been posing these questions to you all postseason, so let's do it one more time. Like you mentioned, there's no Braden Montgomery. Jace LaViolette's basically on one leg. Other guys are banged up. And it's been a different hero, it seems, every night, Bronny, which is what you have to have in the postseason to have success and get to this point. So when you look at this series, it's basically an SEC weekend, right? Just with a little bit more on the line. Key player for you, and what does Texas A&M have to do? What's the key for them to be hoisting that trophy come into this series?
Yeah, I think first of all, you're going to need breaks, like a ball bouncing off a bag like it did against Texas, and just something maybe there, because Tennessee's so good, man. Like Texas A&M, excuse me, Texas A&M can win this series without question, but I just think it's going to take some special performances like we've seen. Like Braden Montgomery goes down and Caden Kent's been electric. Like without Caden Kent, where is this team? And it's crazy to say with Braden Montgomery out, but it's going to take something like that, like somebody stepping up maybe on the pitching side to fill that void, to get those big outs when Prager and Lampkin can't do it out of a starter's role. So I don't know, man. X factor, I think Gavin Grahovic getting going was big. And he can impact the baseball and compress the baseball just as good as anybody. But I think, give me Jackson Appel. I think Jackson Appel he had a bad night last night, and he struck out more in Omaha than he has all season. I think he's due to I think he could be the guy. He didn't get talked about enough all season, hitting behind Grahovic, LaViolette, and Montgomery. Maybe this is his time to shine. And by the way, you talk about the pitching staff and the pitching numbers at A&M. That doesn't happen without a guy behind the plate that is really doing a job. And Jackson Appel has caught his tail off this year, and he's been sensational defensively. And he was the first team All-SEC catcher. But I think offensively here in Omaha, it's been fine. I'm not saying he's been bad. It's just been a little bit off the tick of what we've come to know and see from him. So I think he could have a big series, and if he does, that'll certainly help the Aggies try to keep pace with Tennessee.
Ryan Brauninger of TexAgs, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Texas. A&M Aggies going to be an electric weekend as A&M battles Tennessee for the national title. Ryan, we appreciate you taking the time, man, as always.
Always appreciate you, brother.